an artistic director of a company would suddenly start directing more and more shows in their theater, irregardless of their talents as an actual director. And some artistic directors are fantastic directors, and some artistic directors are okay directors. And we would watch, without the name, direct more and more shows. It was kind of depressing because they weren't a top-notch director, and yet because it was their bailiwick, they were directing more and more. And we didn't know from the outside whether is this a budgetary concern, they just can't afford to bring in any more, or is it a ego thing, or we. This is an awkward question. It's not really a question, it's an observation, but it was a kind of line of depression that started running through my thinking when I looked at various theaters going, come on, guy, go higher. There's some great directors. Why?
Well, it could. I mean, I think you've really mentioned the reasons. It could be financial, that they don't think they can afford it, or definitely ego, if they think they can do everything. Fortunately, I think in my efforts to grow the company, that may have been one of the reasons I really wanted to grow the company, is I didn't want to direct everything. I was really interested in producing and interested in exploring different ways of doing theater by involving other people. I mean, I think I quickly, it might have been getting a few bad reviews, I don't know, but I think I quickly understood my limitations, and shows that I could do, that I really felt comfortable to do, like big musicals or whatever, did speak right to my skill set. And I think that when I thought of looking at big shows on the Stanley stage, I realized I wasn't the most adept at staging big crowds, right? I was fine with two-handers, three-handers, four-handers, whatever, and I was fine with ensembles, particularly if I had a choreographer. And I think once you realize your limitation, now first of all, I was very lucky that when I started out, I did direct a lot of plays in a small theater that I was comfortable in, and they were successful, and everything was going fine. So that by the time I realized that there was only so much I could do, the theater was in a financial situation that we could hire people. So I think I was very lucky that way, that I didn't feel compelled. And I also had to direct everything. And I also was lucky to have colleagues that were pretty good at telling me what was good and what wasn't good. Like
About your work or
about my work.
Oh.
Yeah. You know,
Like what, a
I had,
designer or an actor?
oh,
An
just,
actor would say,
just
Bill,
colleagues
Bill.
that, you know, just sitting around in the bar talking about, you know, that show was just a bit of a stinker.
Was this to be one of the Wright sisters?
You know, and being, you know, when you're confident enough in yourself, you're not, you know, and somebody tells you that was dreadful, you're going to analyze why, and realize that either I didn't spend enough time on it, which often was true, that I was so distracted by the toilet that was good to get in 1976 or whatever, that, you know, you can't do everything. I was never, and I was fairly frank about myself, that I was not, if could have a Morris Panitch directing a classic, I'd have a Morris Panitch, because he was so much better at it than I could be. And that was a blessing, to actually know you could hire somebody like that who would do something quite interesting and unusual that
So I
you
think
yourself wouldn't do.
I want to point out, I think that's another one of your strengths. So not only are you nimble or can change or are not locked, you do not want to be locked in by conditions you don't have a control over, but you, well, maybe it's the same thing. You also have an idea where the limits of your talents are, and you operate within them, whereas some artistic directors don't feel they have a limit to their talent. And I'm not saying that to say you're good and they're not so good. I'm saying that to say you were in the position for 46 years. There's got to be a reason for that, and the long-term longevity and success of the Arts Club.
Yeah, and I think that I think it has a lot to do with the growth of the company. I think if the company had stayed a certain size, and then you would feel compelled that you have to direct X, Y, Z because that's your job, then that's the kind of pressure that I never felt as the company grew. And clearly, if we'd had more than one facility, we had 2 or 3 facilities, I'm not going to be directing everything anyways. So, and also because I think I really had an interest in developing talent. I think I really felt that part of my instinct, I always felt I had good instinct in casting, that was part of the success of the shows I did direct, was that I was able to cast the right people.
What is a good instinct in casting?
Somebody asked me that, and I was not able to define it because I don't think I can define it, because it is just something that you would have as your instinct is when you're saying there's a show you're watching that you're not quite sure why it's not as good as it should be. That's your instinct. And so I think the kind of actor I was always looking for, a performer I was looking for, is first of all, have a certain warmth on stage. Like Nicola Cavendish is the perfect example. She is so warm on stage. She literally can do anything. They say she could read the phone book, if people still had phone books, and it would be entertaining. So I look to see when somebody's auditioning for a certain role, do they speak to me? Do they actually reach out and I'm interested in what they're saying? If I'm not interested, then I know either they can't do it, or they don't have the warmth, they're not reaching to me. So if they don't reach to me, they're not going to reach to an audience. They may in a certain role, but...
And that was like an intuitive, emotional
Absolutely.
reaction, person walks in the room and go, great, nice person, but as opposed to someone walks in, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm interested. What is that in the actor?
Exactly.
What is it?
And I think all skilled directors have that. I mean, obviously,
Right.
if you're casting a role, you want somebody that you also connect to, because you're not going to be able to direct that person if you're not connecting. And that certainly happened to me in my career, where I maybe didn't cast right, and I've got somebody that I'm quarreling with, and we're not on the same wavelength. So. But I think I was lucky in having, without knowing, that I had a certain instinct.